We're finishing up our series on strategies for grace. Today we're looking at something that Paul wrote, teaching us how to master evil with God or evil with good. And so that's a hard thing for us to do, but this is one of the most important aspects of our faith, because this is what really separates us from the rest of the world if we really strive to do it the right way. And that requires that we need a lot of help to do just what we're being asked to do. Many of you know my past, and I didn't really have any connection with the church until I was in high school, and even then was pretty sketchy until the latter parts of my high school year. But the way I grew up in a world that placed different expectations on me than the world that I discovered when I chose to take my faith seriously. And I'll give you an example of that. I was taught through the world and through family to retaliate with those who persecute me. I was taught to intimidate those who intimidate me. I'm pretty good at that still. I was taught to stand up for my rights, to protect my feelings, to prove my worth and my value, to seek the recognition that I deserve. I was taught to protect my image, to fight and defend myself at all costs, either vocally or physically, but also was taught to look out for myself. Look out for number one, because nobody else in this world is going to do it for you. Now, can you imagine living or being in a room full of people that choose to live this way? Well, I can. When I was the latter part of high school, I decided I would consider going into ministry. And so when I went to TCU my sophomore year, I decided that I was really going to try to make an impact with my life, and what was the best possible way to do that. I knew the church. Church was kind of passive, and they just sat off in the corner somewhere and really didn't do a lot of activity enough for me. So I thought, well, in order to make changes in this world, what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to go into politics. And so while I was at TCU, I started to look into political science and started in that. I started hanging out with people who are in that field, people who are those who are moving in that direction. And it took me not very long at all to really understand what was going on. It didn't take long for me to discover that a majority of those who are in politics operate out of this mindset. They were not the public servants I was led to believe that they were. And they have been given so much power over the course of time that they push their agendas or the agendas of the party at the expense of the people. That year, I was sickened, literally sick, I remember very well, at the way of life that was taught by this world. So I decided to invest not in politics, but I decided to invest instead in God's kingdom. Because in God's kingdom, at least there is a line that's drawn in the sand of what you cannot do. At least in God's kingdom, Jesus demands that the world or his followers deny ourselves. Deny yourself. Or resist the temptation to be selfish. Resist the temptation to make life all about me and my family, but to try to make life right for others, which also includes the hardest people of all, our enemies. And I would say that the biggest difference between the world in which we live in and the world that God wants us to create is really the difference between selfishness and selflessness. And I think this is the main problem that people have with church. Outsiders of the church do not see Christ's behavior in Christians. They agree with what Gandhi said. I like your Christ. I just don't like your Christians. Your Christians are not like your Christ. Makes a lot of sense. So why would anybody outside the church want to tie up a good weekend to go to a place that promotes a way of life that is no different than anywhere else? Christ's greatest challenge to his followers is revealed by the words of Paul as he spoke to Rome. So hear these words and see how they differ from the world in which we live. Bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse. Rejoice with those who rejoice, weep with those who weep, live in harmony with one another. Do not be haughty, but associate with the lowly. Do not claim to be wiser than you are. Do not repay anyone evil for evil, but take thought for what is noble in the sight of all. If it is possible, so far as it depends on you, live peaceably with all. Beloved, never avenge yourself, but leave room for the wrath of God, for it is written, vengeance is mine, I'll repay, says the Lord. No. If your enemies are hungry, feed them. If they're thirsty, give them something to drink. For by doing this, you will heap burning coals on their heads. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. Remember last September, I buried my father, and my dad was one of my very few people that I confided in for direction in my early parts of my ministry, and actually even at TCU, when I was going through difficult moments or difficult situations. He was always one that I would call. He was one of the two people I would actually call. Actually, I had a process that I would go through when I went through difficult moments. The first thing I would always do was I would always try to find a place of silence where I could be undistracted. And there I would just kind of be with God. I'm not much of a prayer. You could say that my prayers are more of just being in the presence of God, of just trying to isolate myself and let things kind of slow down and to be aware that God is around me, and then taking my situations in life and kind of working through them in that presence. And once I kind of got a handle on that, I would call my mentor, my minister, who also died. His name is Bill Mackey. He was the minister that took me into his home when I was in the latter parts of my high school days and kind of directed me in the position of going into ministry. So I would talk with him, and he would give me a perspective through his wisdom that he'd had over the course of years. Plus, he knew me extremely well, and so that was always helpful. And then I would call my father, and Dad was always the person of reason, and he'd always make sense to me. And then he also was a person throughout his life who always chose the high road to go through. And then once I would hear from all these different angles, I would then go back into a time of just silent reflection. And it was usually then that I would make a decision that the direction that I needed to go, while my heart and my mind were in the right place. That's where I would make my decision. When everything's slowing down, emotions are died away, moved on, I would sit and rationally put a plan together that I would then try to execute with my life. That's what I always generally do, and even to some extent, even today, but with different people, obviously. So it makes me wonder what you do. What you do when you're confronted with big decisions in your life. What do you do when you find yourself in a highly emotional situation? Who do you turn to? What do you do? Do you do anything? Because one of the key ingredients or elements of making the appropriate decisions that are consistent with this faith that we profess in Jesus Christ during some very challenging moments is to seek out those solid people, those trusting people of faith who love us enough not to tell us what we want to hear, right? But tell us what we need to do. Tell us what we need to hear that is consistent with the faith of Jesus Christ. Life is full of all sorts of difficult situations and trying times, no doubt about it. I think one of the most trying times I've uncovered in my ministry is always deals with the issue of people going through divorce, especially when children are involved. Emotions are always spurred by grief anyway. And then on top of that, you have all these hurt feelings and embarrassment that can easily influence our actions and our words. And then more than that, you can also have kids, if they're involved, they start to get used as pawns or tools for revenge on the other. It's very, very ugly. Some of us have experienced that or seen that or worked through some people with that. There's a lady here named Laura who went through a divorce. And she has kids, teenage kids, and she shares custody with those kids on an equal basis. But still, emotions get involved. And all that does is make a very difficult situation even more challenging. I want you to listen to Laura's story.
I was scared because they were going over there a week at a time and then coming to me a week at a time. While they were with him, I was like, they're going to come back to me hating me. And, I just don't know how to handle that, because it's like, it's not that I don't want them to love him, but I don't want them to forget me either. And, I didn't necessarily want to fight with him every night, but then everything turned into a fight. I mean, we couldn't agree on anything after that as far as the kids went. He didn't want them coming to church. He didn't want them doing things with me. I, at first, felt helpless. And then I talked with Danny, and he said, you have to remember that he's hurting. And just love your kids. They will see that. You don't have to tell them, well, your dad did this, remember this, and, kind of play the same game. And he told me not to do that.
Paul said in this text, do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. That looks good on paper, doesn't it? That was really good on paper. It seems nearly impossible whenever emotions and feelings that are raw get involved, doesn't it? And we would just tend to rely on what we feel inside to respond. And I think too many times we let ourselves off the hook, that we believe that our feelings define who we are. We allow our feelings to determine what it is that we should do. That's a scary proposition. Because Jesus taught it differently. It is our actions, it is our attitude, it's our behavior that define who we are, regardless of how we feel. This is why we have one another, is to help us to make the right course of action that reflects our faith in Jesus Christ. Now, we sat down with Laura and we talked about her struggle until we discovered a plan or a strategy that she could follow that was consistent with Christ's behavior. And when she followed through on her plan, that she began to discover new things. That all those negative, hurtful, hateful feelings began to change into something more positive and helpful.
So I would just text the kids once a day, or in the mornings I would let them know that I love them, hope you have a good day, and then once again at night I stopped telling them, your dad is calling me and texting me and saying that y'all will discover the truth and that y'all won't want to have anything to do with me. I stopped thinking that way, stopped being afraid, and just loved them. But I stopped getting angry after I stopped reacting to that. I started to realize that all that mattered was that I do love my kids and I just want what's best for them. And I stopped letting what he said bother me, because I knew it wasn't true. And I knew that as long as the kids knew that I loved them, and that as long as I didn't lose my mind about it, it would just be better for everybody. And for the most part, I've stayed on that road. It is hard sometimes. Yeah, there are some days that I just want to not be so kind, but I don't want to be that person either.
I really like how she ended that response. Her explanation of why she didn't respond negatively to her ex-husband, she said, I don't want to be that person. That's pretty powerful. So it makes me think of, what kind of person do you want to be? What kind of person do you want to be? Do you want to be the one who can't control their tongue? You want to be the one that acts nice in front of people, but as soon as they walk out the room, we have something negative to say? You want to be the antagonist? Do you want to be the one who fights fire with fire, evil with evil? You want to be the one that justifies behavior because someone else acted out in that evil way? Or would you rather be the one who learns self-control? The one who takes the high road? The one who refuses to get caught up in the drama? The one who is an anchor that weathers the storms of life? Believe it or not, we can choose to be that kind of person that we wish to be. We just can't become that person on our own. We need strong people of faith to help us to become the person that we want to be, who reflects the person that God sees us to be. Strong people of faith will do three things for you. They will be a constant source of support. Support in our times of weakness, support in times of uncertainty. They will not judge, but they will give us what we truly need, and they will believe in us more than we believe in ourselves. And they will give us encouragement. They will know our ability to overcome obstacles in our lives more than we believe in ourselves. And they'll have you accountability, which is so very important today, because it's to remind us of who we are, remind us of the commitment we made to live the right way, and to allow ourselves not to be defined by our feelings and emotions, but allow our lives to be defined by our actions and our attitudes and our behavior. The ones that have modeled the person of Jesus that we've come together to worship and to profess. The word grace is something that we all crave in our lives. We crave it from others, we crave it from God, but it is a gift that we really struggle to reflect in our actions. And having a strategy in place to help us to reflect our faith when the fires of life are high makes all the difference in the world. This is why we need one another. So find each other in our times of need, and find those people that can give you the support and the encouragement, the accountability we need, so that we can reflect Christ with our lives.